Did Einstein deserve this much fame in science? Perhaps among the scientists of the last 100 years in all branches of science, no one has the fame of the German physicist Albert Einstein. Even among ordinary people on the street, he is known as a genius scientist and has a remarkable reputation, without even knowing what his real role was in the advancement of human knowledge. It was in late 1905 that Einstein wrote his most famous equation. The year 1905 was followed by the miracle year of Einstein. Before the end of this year, he published an article that was an appendix to his previous article on the theory of special relativity. This edition defined a new relationship between mass and energy that ultimately determined the most well-known equation in the world, E equals mc2. Einstein did an extraordinary job in the midst of the impending global war and his family conflict. In 1915, he made one of the greatest scientific advances of the 20s. Subscribe our YouTube channel to watch the rest of this video and more. Century, the theory of general relativity. This new theory, which allowed his particular theory of relativity to be used more, claimed that the space and time were not two separate entities, but a single element, which he named space-time. But there was a problem. He now had to prove his theory correctly. Einstein's theory of general relativity was tested in 1919, of course not by himself. In 1919, Arthur Eddington conducted his experiment in a full solar eclipse, proving the validity of Einstein's theory and turning it into a superstar overnight. When the news of the confirmation reached Britain, Einstein replied that I never doubted that the result would be positive. When asked if the measurements did not support the theory of general relativity, what he thought, he replied, "Then I felt sorry for the dear Lord." In summary, Einstein challenged some of Newton's fundamental concepts, which had dominated science for more than 200 years, in his theory of special relativity. Concepts such as absolute space, absolute time, coincidence of two events, absolute space interval, and absolute time interval. Einstein even showed that Newton's second law is true only for low speeds and needs to be corrected at high speeds. In addition to relativity, Einstein laid the scientific foundations for products such as laser, paper napkins, and some of the most widely used products today. Throughout his life, he has done extensive research on wormholes, superdimensions, the possibility of time travel, and the existence of black holes and the origin of the universe. Finally, it should be emphasized that, as it seems, the main reason for Einstein's universalist fame was his boldly and modernist interpretation of fundamental concepts such as space and time, which was in stark contrast to Newton's ideas. In other words, Einstein was the first to question Newton's ideas about fundamental concepts and became the founder of a new scientific worldwide for understanding nature. He was also the first to provide an acceptable mathematical description of the entire universe. In fact, modern cosmology is based on Einstein's theory of general relativity. Before him, human knowledge of the whole universe was more based on speculations. It is noteworthy that although Newton was British and in those years Germany was at war with Britain, Eddington and the British Royal Academy of Science were so brave as to declare the right to Einstein. The right is with the German Einstein. Newton was wrong, and that's why they can be said to have played a big role in bringing Einstein to fame. So Einstein seems to have really deserved this pervasive fame in science. He has spent the last year of his life in Princeton, a city in the United States. He has spent most of his life in the city completing his theories on the unity of natural forces. He died on April 18, 1955. One of his hallmarks was accepting reality and admitting his mistakes, a trait that may be rare among people who have little scientific standings. I made a big mistake in life, Einstein told his old friend Linus Pauling a year before he died. I signed a letter of recommendation to build an atomic bomb for Roosevelt, but I had a reason for it, the danger of the bomb being made by Germans. After Einstein's death in 1955, his brain was removed. Marion Diamond was the scientist who discovered that there were significantly more cells in the areas of the brain that are responsible for producing information than in a normal person. Another study found that Einstein's brain did not have a specific wrinkle called the Sylvian fissure, which caused the neurons of Einstein's brain to make better connections with each other. Another study found that Einstein's brain was denser than that of a normal human brains, and that the lower adrenal lobe, which is associated with the ability to perform mathematical operations, was larger. In 1998, after decades of complete protection for Einstein's brain, Harvey gave it to the Department of Pathology at Princeton University School of Medicine, just like a holy object, the city where Einstein spent the last 2 decades of his life. Einstein's eyes are kept in a safe box in New York City.